Welcome to the Lessons from the Tank podcast. I am so glad that you are here this week because I have Jake and Michelle from Supercubes who won the golden ticket on season 12. You have got to check this out. They talk about just getting started. I hope that you guys enjoy this because I loved it. Jake and Michelle, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
So I have to say, I rewatched your episode again today, and Mark Cuban yelling the name of your company over and over again. You know, I'm a marketing guy. That would be all over social media. It would just be like, you know, Supercubes, like that would be on every single thing that we did. But anyway, tell us about your company, Supercubes.
So Supercubes is a company that designs innovative trays to help you freeze food in portioned amounts. So no longer do you have to freeze in large bags or containers. You can freeze in sturdy silicone trays, portions that are easy to reheat in.
Like 1 cup, half cup, 2 cup, or 2 tablespoons. And so, and it's really easy to just freeze in that individual portion and take out just the amount that you need or want to make a recipe or to heat up for yourself for a meal. And it just makes it really easy for people to do meal prep, which is extremely popular these days, and then also save food and reduce food waste. So people actually save a ton of money when they start using our products because they're throwing away a lot less food and they're actually able to like use their leftovers in like kind of a manageable way. So yeah, that's kind of what the products are all about.
I often like to say, even your favorite chili or soup, you don't want to eat it 5 days in a row. So it's better to freeze it so you can enjoy it again later.
Yeah.
I know in your episode they talked about, babies and stuff like that, doing, homemade baby food and stuff. But
Yeah.
from looking at your product and understanding like where my family's at, so we're on the tail end. We're almost empty nesters. So I still have a senior in high school and a 19-year-old still at home. So my wife and I are going through this weird stage where we still want to have dinner together, but there's only 2 of us, but she's used to making, like, I have 4 kids, now 2 of them are adults and out, but she still makes enough for, like, I don't know, 30 people. And our girls that are still at home like taking leftovers to work and school and stuff. I'm like, this is exactly what we need for our family who is not with young kids or anything. Like it's like a completely different stage than I think most people would think that your product would come in handy. But for us, I'm like, I need a bunch of those. Like this is amazing.
What we found, I think, through the journey of growing the company and selling the products is that there are so many people who the product like fits into their life and can make an improvement in how they're cooking, eating meals or sharing food. And it's so far beyond what we originally thought of when we dreamed up the product. Like originally I was like, oh, we should just have chicken stock that we make at home for like risotto or whatever. When the recipe says 3 cups, here it's 3 cups. Like that was the original idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but we realized like in, the whole journey and starting to sell the product is there's so many different uses where this is actually an ideal way to freeze the food. And so exactly like for people in your situation or, for parents who are even older and then their kids come or they take frozen food to them in their dorm in college or whatever it is, or especially different sub-communities of people who are like really need to manage portioned amounts and things like that. And the whole baby thing too. Mm-hmm. So it's, it's just kind of like there were so many other places where the product is really useful and helpful. And like, we never thought of that
right.
Yeah.
originally.
When and again, I have to be honest with you. I was watching it. I remember the first time I saw your episode, and I was like, "Oh, it's a silicone tray. I've seen those before." You know what I mean? Like I've seen the ice cube trays and stuff like that. But there's like special twists with yours that like as the episode started going, I'm like, "Oh, that's brilliant!" Like the steel in the top, so that it actually has some I guess what's the word
Like
I'm looking
support.
for? What's that?
It's very sturdy.
Yes, it's very sturdy, and then
Yeah.
the lids that are sturdy as well. So even with having hot food that you're stacking in there, or you know what I mean, it's not frozen yet, but you can stack them up in your freezer. It just there's so many little intricacies that make your product so cool.
Thank you.
Did it start off like that, or you like it has to be sturdy, it has to have steel,
Yeah, we did a lot of research kind of in the beginning once we had the idea, and we're like, okay, this could go several different ways. Like, I think ultimately we were like, this is going to come down to marketing because there are going to be people who are going to,
Mhm.
try to knock us off, right? Once it
Sure.
starts to become successful, if we're so lucky. But when we were designing it, we are like, okay, it's got to have this steel rim thing, which we had seen on some other ice cube tray types, and we're like, okay, that's super important because we wanted the independent wells.
Yep.
That was like a key thing, so that you could really easily take one out, because like the large whiskey cube trays that are like super cheap where everything is connected in one piece, it's so hard to take those ice cubes out. Like we're like, that's a really frustrating experience, and it's not going to be good.
Hmm.
So those are kind of some of the things that we thought about when we were designing.
But I think if we take like a step back and I think about the inspiration, so we were talking about making broth and stock at home, this thing that can take all day. It always yields a very large amount. It was just the two of us at the time. And I was telling Jake, I freeze a lot of broth, but I freeze it in regular plastic ice cube trays. I have to like twist, it kind of flies all over the place. I reheat it in the microwave with a measuring glass because I have no idea how much is in each ice cube. And so I was kind of walking through the landscape for how to freeze foods. And
Hmm.
so we looked up other ways you could freeze in bags, but that's kind of a pain. You can freeze in glass, but it can explode. You can freeze in plastic containers, but then those containers are held hostage.
Yep.
And so Jay kind of very obviously, he's an engineer, was like, oh, look for a tray with fill lines so that you know exactly how much you're freezing. And it seemed so obvious to him. And I went online and I looked. It, of course, didn't exist. But nobody else was thinking, oh, people are freezing beyond water for ice cubes. They're freezing food here.
Yeah.
We should really have these portions so that they can kind of size up for whatever recipe they're making. And so I think that was really the first thing that differentiated us. And then we invested in thicker silicone and steel and the kind of in the rim, making sure all the wells were separated. But the initial idea of what separated us was that all of our trays would have fill lines to help you know how much it is that you're
Right. And that
freezing.
it would be a larger portion than anything that was out there.
Hmm.
I mean, I think those little, like, even the 2 inch by 2 inch whiskey cubes are
I
maybe
think they're like a third of a
a
cup.
third of a cup or something like
Which is
that. So it's
nothing when you're trying to do a
yeah,
meal. Like a third of a cup of
exactly.
anything is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I think from that initial idea, and it's so funny at the time, we were living in the Bay Area, Northern California, and I was working as a product manager at a cybersecurity tech company. And so, like I was in this place where I'm thinking about like marketing, sales, engineering, and all those aspects are kind of like rolled into that job function. Um, and so this was kind of like a fun little project experiment to like think about, like, okay, well, who's the customer, which is basically like Michelle, and then
Hmm.
what are the things that she's looking for. And so it was like this encapsulated little kind of like experiment to think about, and then how would we market it and all this. And so, and then we were like, okay, let's let's go do it. Well, I said that, and then Michelle was like, you're crazy.
I was like, no, I spent my whole career in education. I love working with students. But the only reason I agreed to do it is because the thing that we both love is cooking. It's how we kind of connect with our family recipes and histories. And we're fortunate that both of our moms are really big cooks.
Hmm.
And so it's something we can get excited about. But I think similar to your recipes with your wife, the recipes that we have are not for two people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so leftovers is always something that we dealt with and not wanting to eat it all week when the food gets less exciting. And so I was like, okay, we'll try, but neither one of us is leaving our career. You know,
Right.
this is
Just for fun to
just for
see
Yeah.
fun.
what does it
Just
take to
it's a
start a company.
hobby. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I was, I mean, I had always been interested in doing something, um, but like I don't know, things, it was like always very complicated to get, I thought, to get started. And, what does it really take to start the company? And do you have to go raise money and all this stuff? And like some of the ideas just seemed like bigger. Like if you want to build a software product, like that takes a lot of time, and developers are expensive and all that. And
Right.
we were living in Silicon Valley. And so I was like surrounded by that. But part of being surrounded by all these people starting companies is that it's like this infectious kind of mood where you're like, okay, I can start something too, and I should. And I thought that this would be like kind of the practice run of like putting the entity together, getting all that stuff going, just
For some other
feeling
idea.
it out as like this, kind of dry run for another idea.
It's
And I had
practice. Yeah, I
no
gotcha.
thought that this would be like this would get so big. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and I definitely want to come back to that. But I want to talk about your Shark Tank experience first of all.
Sure.
Before we jump into the lesson that you've learned and how we can help our audience, because you guys made me jealous on your Shark Tank episode. First of all, you had a bunch of sharks, fighting over you. You have Mark Cuban yelling the name of your company, but then, something that very rarely happened on your episode. So can you share a little bit what your experience is like, and how, our mutual partner, Lori Greiner, treated you
Yeah.
guys so much better than she treated Flex Screen?
Oh
Um,
no.
I think one of the first things to realize about our episode is that we were in season 12,
Mhm.
which was the first season filmed in the COVID
COVID, yeah.
era. And it was like, still when everybody was freaking out and how is it going to happen. And so our episode and all of the episodes from our season were filmed in this bubble at the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. And so Michelle and I were like, okay, we're going to do the show. We drive out to Las Vegas, the two of us in the car with like a truck, like
Lots of
SUV full of super cubes trays
yeah.
for the set. And then we get there and it's like, okay, great. You disappear into like the back of the hotel, and they take you to your room. After 10 COVID tests, they take you to your room. And we did not leave that room for like
Until we went to the
until
tank.
we went to the tank.
Yeah, they're like, do not
2 days.
emerge again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Couldn't even go in the hallway. And so when we were in the tank, it was also like our first time seeing people
Yeah.
in a while. But I think when I first got to the tank, I was just so nervous because the company is three of us. Our partner and friend Sasan is part of the business as well, but they cut that out from the episode. But to be exposing kind of the financials and intricacies of your business, you're very vulnerable,
Sure.
and you don't know if they're going to say, you have a great idea, we want to invest, or if they're like, this is a terrible idea and you should stop.
Yeah.
And so I was terrified to kind of expose our business in such a public way and not have a known reaction. But all the sharks were incredibly enthusiastic, and Lori ultimately offered us her golden ticket for the season and offered us the exact deal that we came into the tank asking for. She's our favorite shark, and so it's kind of a no-brainer to take it.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of taking a second to respond because I looked at Jake like, did I imagine that, or did she actually offer that? Because before I say yes, I want to make sure that I heard correctly.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the whole experience. I mean, what I would say is, we're in there for like an hour talking. And I remember it was probably once after we got through the pitch part, where you're that you've rehearsed a million times.
Right.
Um, and like that part is over and the conversation starts. Like I just remember kind of being in this zone where thinking like I'm having a great time talking with these people. And I wish it could have gone on and on, because I recognize that we had I think a unique experience in that everything was very positive,
Hmm.
for the most, I think everything except for there was a conversation about like the microwave, which, I was like, okay, I don't know where this is going. But anyway, uh, it was a very positive. And so I was like, I'm really just enjoying talking to these people who have so much experience, and, we can really learn something from, and have a constructive conversation. So that it was super fun. And I like when they started the like deal offer part of the of the show, I was like, oh man, we're
It's coming to an
it's
end.
gonna come to an end soon. Like I felt like kind of Kevin jumped the gun on getting started. He's like, I've seen enough. I'm gonna make you an offer, and I
I
was
was
like,
like,
well,
what?
We're like,
we
hold
still
on, wait,
want to
wait, wait,
talk.
we have more.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we just got started.
But I guess it's like don't sell past the close, right? So, um, yeah, but it was so fun, and also having left the room after 8 days locked up, it was. And I think the we had done so much preparation. You're in the hotel room for all that time.
Right.
There's nothing on your mind besides, like, obviously we're running the business, during the daytime, but like, there's nothing on your mind besides like the task at hand, which is like the pitch and being in the tank. And so we watched like every episode
Yeah.
that was available on Hulu.
Right.
And like your episode, everything. And then like I wasn't even aware of the golden ticket, what that was, until we'd seen two episodes that had it. And I remember like thinking like, that's cool. I wonder if that would happen to us. And then, cause like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, and then there was just all these things just kind of came together where it was like a little bit frothy with the multiple offers, and um, nobody, we didn't even like nobody really uh, got upset about how we were valuing the company. I think because the numbers were there,
Yeah.
um, and so yeah, I don't know. And then I remember like looking at Michelle, like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
Isn't
I
that the
think the
most
rest of the
surreal?
night, we're
Oh,
like,
sorry, go ahead.
I think like saying the whole night, we were like, did that just happen? Did we just make a deal?
Yeah,
Like, we got the deal? Like,
And it is I remember again looking back, right? I remember like just these three specific times. Like you're doing the pitch, right? That's the first portion, and then you go into the discussion, right? Which again, if you're prepared, it's stressful, but not it's not painful. I guess that's the best way of putting it, right? You're having a conversation with fellow entrepreneurs in a
yeah,
lot of ways, and they're asking questions, and you should have the answers. Um, First of all, the people that don't have the answers to that portion of it, like, have you ever watched the show? Like, they're gonna ask
yeah,
tough questions. You need to have the right answers, or at least
yeah,
have answers for it. But then when it goes into the deal portion, I remember like this. It was almost of an out of body experience where it's just like, are we getting a deal? Like, am I getting a deal right now? Are they really going to? Is this happening? I don't know if that happened to you or not, but it was the most surreal experience ever because I remember my mouth working and saying stuff, but I have no like my head's over here somewhere,
yeah.
thinking something else.
I Michelle, I remember told me like she's like, I think I blacked out. Like I don't really,
I don't even know.
yeah,
I mean, what I do remember though, in the edited version, it appears very like it all happened in 2 minutes. But the reality is, Kevin offered his deal. And as we're like comprehending the deal, other sharks are like, okay, I don't care. I have my other questions in order to
Right.
decide if I want to offer a
yeah,
deal. And so it's like before we can even kind of understand what Kevin's deal is, other sharks are jumping in and can you tell me this and can you tell me that? And I want to understand that.
yeah,
And so it was more chaotic in kind of the pace of things, like still positive, but it moved so quickly. I felt like, hold on, like what are all the deals on the table? What are the terms? They had very different structures, kind of what makes sense for us as a business. But the whole time it was just like, it was so quick. It happened. I don't know. I felt like we were there for just a couple of minutes, but the producers told us that we were there for an hour.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and then like I just remember also that night after we got back to our because we filmed it in the evening like 6:30 or something like that,
Oh
and
wow.
we got back to our hotel room afterwards, and it's like you just keep reliving it again in your head again and again and again, and like I couldn't sleep
yeah.
just because you're just like trying to, like recalling like everything that you said and how it went, and it was like I mean crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's little and your experience was a little different than mine because I was the last season before COVID, right? So
right.
we shot in June and then COVID hit, around whatever March of the next year.
Yeah,
But so my wife came out, of course, wasn't on the show, and then we had friends that actually business partners who were out there as well, just to see how things were going. And so we sat in the hotel lobby. And we were we were like second of the day. So I shot at like 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And so
yeah,
we're sitting in the hotel lobby, kind of reliving the like, we got a deal, that kind of thing. And we saw like people come in from the hotel that didn't get deals. I'm like, wow, they
Oh,
had a much different like.
Oh yeah.
I think I can imagine reliving, like to your point, reliving it because I did the same thing. Like you replay that over and over again, the whole experience. I can't
Yeah.
imagine replaying that if I didn't do well. Um, that would
Yeah.
be really, really painful.
Yeah, I could see how like it would be very crushing to, like if you got ripped apart.
Yeah.
And but also, I mean, like okay, you could not get a deal, and then, but then like how they cut it together later, like you don't know how they're going to make it look, and like what the story that they're going to weave together about why you didn't, like, to make it
Yeah.
like why you didn't get the deal. Like so that's kind of like, that could be like the 1-2 punch, but it's like, delayed by like 5 months from when you
Right.
film to when it airs. So I mean, I can just be very thankful that we had a very positive experience. But I think one of the things that we talk, like we have people who, like you said, why you started the podcast is like people are interested in, they're asking you questions about the entrepreneurial journey, but maybe about Shark Tank. And so we have people that are like, hey, I'm thinking about Shark Tank or whatever. Um, is there anything that you can share? And the thing that we always share with people is like, this is a television show,
Mm-hmm.
and television is about entertainment, and so they take all kinds.
Yep.
And you want to have like for the producers, they want to have people who are like where everything looks like great, and there's a deal and it's all beautiful, but it can't be all that. There have to be things where it's like, oh, this person doesn't look like they have it together and they don't know their numbers, and they look kind of silly, or whatever it is, or people who walk away, so all those kinds of things make the show. So and so what we tell people, like, hey, just because you're talking to the producer, just
Yeah, that
remember that they're there to make good TV. They're not there to be your friend necessarily.
yeah, it was funny because I asked producers, I'm like, hey, look, because and you guys know this, the producers are there to get you on the show. That's their whole job is
yeah.
to get you on the show, and so they're encouraging and things like that. And I'm like, I asked them one time, I said, "Do you say this to everyone?" Because they're like, "Oh, you know, or like, do you have some people that you work with, and you're like, oh man, if you get on the show, you are just going to crash and burn. Like, is that going through the back of your
Yeah,
mind?" And
yeah,
and they had a very, you could tell that at some point somebody had written this out for them, but they said, we never want to limit somebody's ability to tell their story on national TV and give them the opportunity to go out and put their company's best foot forward. Who are we to gauge whether or not they're going to do a good job or bad job? And I'm
yeah,
like, okay, somebody wrote that for you. Like you're almost
yeah,
like reading that off of because I'm like, because there are definitely companies that are going to go on there and just embarrass themselves. But that again, that's our choice
Yeah.
whether we want to go on TV and we want that exposure, or if we're going to prepare or not prepare. It's just that's all on
yeah,
us as individuals. So,
exactly.
I
but
do think Barbara said in an episode this season about she commented on like valuations and you can justify them however you want. Whether it's 1x or 2x or 5x, or I use this multiple, or I look at this component. And I think that really speaks to there aren't like clear and fast rules about how you value a company. And so I could understand why a producer says, like, I don't like, there are times we watch an episode and I'm like, wow, like, I'm shocked no one offered a deal. This seems like such a great company and they seem
right,
like great entrepreneurs. They're working so hard and it just no one bites. And then there are other times where I'm like, oh, I didn't think all five would jump in. And so there is something to the like, you don't know how they'll react, but the best that you can do is really know your numbers, know your customers, and know what your product is, and kind of how you would use the money.
Yeah.
Anything else is just you'll have to respond to once you're there.
I think what's funny about like the whole golden ticket situation for us is that in all the preparation that we had done, like I had talked to, valuation is always something that comes up, and
yep,
they love beating people up about that. And obviously they're there to get like a deal, right?
hmm
So um I had done so much work preparing to go to battle about the value of the company. I had done like discounted cash flow analyses and talked to friends in banking and VC and all these like all these different ways to value the company, and was like prepared to like, really dig in. And then it didn't happen.
They never asked.
Yeah, and then Lori's like, sure, whatever, your valuation's great. Here's
Yeah, so I like it's like she like parachuted in and kind of like saved me from having to like, really like it would have been interesting to see how the conversation went, but like I think, and what's funny is right before we went in the tank, we had decided to kind of change the ask
Mhm.
a little bit. So originally we were thinking like, oh, we're gonna do like 500,000 for 5%, and I was like, it's like really like expecting that we're gonna negotiate, right?
Mhm.
And then I was thinking like, we don't really need that much money, so why don't we drop the money amount, and then like, but we can keep the percentage like where it is, because I really felt like, based on all the numbers that we were looking at, the company was probably worth, close to twice that, from just on the
Yeah.
EBITDA basis, and like we'll see what we can get to, and so we decided to like drop it to like 400,000 for 5%, which I think just felt a little more approachable, and like because I think if we had asked for that extra 100K, it would have gotten we
Yeah.
wouldn't I don't think we would have had the same thing. So we kind of had this like gut check moment before we walked in, and we told the producers, hey, we're changing the ask to this, and then that's what we said when we walked out there, and
I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did it. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like going with your gut, right before you're gonna go in front of 30 million people. Like that's
Yeah,
great.
exactly. Yeah, game time decision.
Yeah.
So, so talk to us a little bit about, one of the lessons that you've learned in this practice company that you've got on national TV, and I got to tell you, like, if this is your practice one, I can't wait until you like actually try, on a company. But to talk to us a little bit about, one of the lessons that you've learned through this experience.
Yes, I think like my main takeaway from this experience is like you got to do it. Like the big difference between for us having this company and like, you know, not having this company and just continuing to work in the jobs that we were, I'd say, relatively happy in, and having the life that we had before, is like actually taking that concrete first step of saying like, okay, we're really going to do this, we're really going to commit, a small amount of money. Like we started the company with like, between me, Michelle, and Sasan, with like $15,000.
Oh wow,
And
that's pretty humble beginnings. That's great.
yeah, and so we were like, okay, um, let's just take this step, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna form the entity, and we're gonna make the mold, and we're gonna go forward with this design and do the first minimum production run, and see if we can sell them, um, and like not invest a ton of money in like fancy videos and Kickstarter and all that stuff. Like, let's see if we can go sell these out actually in the real marketplace, and like, so deciding to like actually go do it, and like getting like that like activation energy or whatever it is
Yep.
to go kind of make it, that's like the defining moment, I think. And I'm just so glad that we did. And so I think that's what I would like to encourage people to do, is like take the step. You'll never know unless you try. And like the market is harsh, right? You're going to get that feedback right away, I think. And so like I think every industry is different. Like in our case, the costs were not outrageous. Like we didn't need to tool up like crazy. So it wasn't as bad to like make. Obviously, it wasn't enough money, the 15K. So after we sold through the first bit, we needed more to
Right.
fund inventory and everything like that. But by then you already have some confidence that there's something going on. But yeah, it's like take the first step.
I mean, I also would like encourage people to kind of bootstrap for as long as you can. I think I see a lot of people who are so eager to make their teams really big very quickly before they've sold a lot of product. And a lot of their cash is held up in salaries or in Facebook ads. And it makes it harder for them to have really sustainable and manageable growth, kind of with their cash flow. And so I always really encourage people to think about, you know, what are all the skills that you can learn that you don't have, that you don't need to hire out right now. And so I come from an education background, Jason, electrical engineer, neither one of us had experience in this area, but we had the internet available to teach us.
Hmm.
And we had social media to leverage, which was free marketing. And so we were really trying to think like, for as long as we can, how can we bootstrap this business so that we can continue to invest in inventory and not take on any debt or put ourselves in a position where we're running a loss every year. And so learn a lot, even if it's not something you studied in college, even if it wasn't your prior job. I feel like there are so many skills that you can learn throughout this business. And the kind of the more you know about the different parts of the business, I think the better eye you have on it and instinct. And then when it is time to hire and bring people onto the team, you'll have a sense of like, what does this need? What is an area I can most contribute to? What is an area that other people are going to be better equipped to handle? But I'm always very concerned when I see people like, oh, I have all these people and I took in all this outside money, when their product is not expensive. Like it doesn't require tooling,
Right.
in this case. And I'm like, ooh, like the
Yeah.
stakes are higher for you.
I think like in your case, I've heard you mention that, you had to raise a bunch of money or that you started making stuff in your garage, but then like eventually, you build out a factory and that's expensive. And so, that's different from where we were, but yeah.
It is, and again, I think that there's there's certainly different levels. Yeah, we went from, I did as much analysis as I could with the prototypes that I could make in my garage, right? So, you got as much market feedback. Luckily, I was in the industry that I, am sell to, so I wasn't, trying to make something in the pet food industry that I don't have any contacts and things like
Right.
that. But yeah, there was a big step there that needed made, which a lot of times companies that have to make that big step, you get into that analysis paralysis type of thing, right? You can't analyze it enough to get up the nerve to make that jump. And so the way that you guys did it, trying to keep it a little bit smaller scale to test the market is great. I mean, if you're able to do that.
Yeah, not, I mean, if we were a software company, we wouldn't have been able to. So it really depends on your product and what are the costs involved to get a product to market. And so we were lucky in that our tooling costs were manageable. But I think as long as if you need to raise money to build something expensive, that's very different. But to kind of bootstrap as much as you can to hold on to those margins, I think is something that can really be an investment for your future.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
exactly.
absolutely right, and I think what I've seen with some entrepreneurs that make so they make the first step, right, and then they think that life should get easier for them,
Oh,
for some reason, right, and y- and
Wish.
you're like no, if you don't need a vice president of sales and you can do it yourself, well, you should be doing it yourself. If you don't need a bookkeeper and you can learn QuickBooks online, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like then you should do that for as long as you possibly can, to the
Yeah.
point where your company is suffering because you can't do anything well enough to go to the next step. And that's
That's
that's when you
exactly
start hiring
Exactly.
people.
that's our whole experience is like, and then like I think the only like the caution there is like it can be hard to let go
Hmm.
of some of these things, and you're like, okay, no, I can still do this, like the bookkeeping or whatever. So like finally, I'm like, you know what, the bookkeeping drives me totally crazy, and so we finally like brought in
Yeah.
people to help, and it's like okay,
Or
uh,
some of the customer service stuff. I don't have to track down a package for a customer that the carrier lost.
Yep.
That's not a good use of my time. And so we finally, after after
after
Shark
Shark
Tank,
Tank,
I
oh
wish we did
man,
it before Shark Tank,
yeah,
brought in someone who's wonderful to help us with our customer service. Because it ended up hurting us having me do all the customer service, and not focusing on product and on influencer relationships and things like that, content for the website. But yeah, we were slow to hire,
yeah.
for sure.
And I think like, one of the other things is you see people who are like, "Oh, I quit my job. Like I'm starting this company. I quit my job." And I'm like, and a lot of times on Shark Tank, people say that, and then like the sharks are like, "Oh my God, are you, like, whoa, what are you doing?"
Right.
Like, or the people who sold their house, which is
Hmm.
like
That's very
that's
scary.
very scary stuff. And it's like, okay, I see that people are like, I'm putting a, I'm putting this stake in the sand to like I'm doing it. I'm committed. Like, I want to show you how committed I am. And I've taken this very dramatic step. But it's like, you know, like, I guess it works out for some people. And like but there's a survivorship bias, and you only hear a lot about those like positive stories about
Yep.
like, oh, so and so lived out of their car and sold their house, and then they turned it, and now they're like whatever,
Yeah.
their company is huge. But it's like, okay, that you don't need to do that. I didn't quit my job until April 2020. We started the company summer 2017. I didn't quit until I didn't even think it was like something that I could quit for until after we had like 2019, our first full year. Like we launched a product February 2018. 2019 was the first full year in business, and and we disclosed this on Shark Tank. So we did like nearly $1 million in sales, and I was like, okay, we we netted, not that we took any of the money out, the money just kept
Right.
going back into the company, but like we more than I made from my job,
Yep.
which was a great job. And I'm like, okay, we could make this happen now. So until that time, there were no salaries, like it was like everything goes back into inventory so that we don't run out of stock. And and then like we do as much as we can ourselves so that we're as lean as possible. And I wasn't going to quit my job until it was like a sure thing. And my mother-in-law still thought I was nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I quit later. I quit nearly a year after him. But like what we told my mom when she was freaking out, because there's a lot of unknowns when you're
Hmm.
running your own business. You don't have a stable paycheck and stable revenue stream in the same way as having a traditional job. Is that our prior work experience does not go away.
Yep.
And yes, we're leaving our current jobs and our current careers to run Supercubes. But if it doesn't work out, then we took the risk. We learned even more skills, and hopefully, we're more valuable for another company if we want to join another company or if we want to start another idea. And so, I think, maybe don't mortgage your house so quickly, but at some point, like, it's okay to make the jump. I think if you're in a financial position to do so, you can always go back to your old career if you're interested in
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
No one says you're kicked out for life,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Yeah, and what's it's really funny because my wife and I, because we did have to raise money, right? So I had to bring in money to this, and part of it was, if we're bringing in our money, you have to do this full time. Like that was part of the uh, part of my risk that I had to assume
Yeah.
with doing this. And that conversation with my wife was like, what's the worst that happens? I go sell cars or something. Like,
Yeah.
and again, it's not the end of the world if a business fails, if it doesn't work out. Again, you never want to plan for that. You don't. Well, I don't want to say plan for it, but you never want to anticipate that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to your point, there's lots of, you can go back to another job.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah.
I think one of the amazing things to me about, like, so we lived in the Bay Area, and where there's just super constant like focus on entrepreneurship and startups and all this. And I think it's like kind of a microcosm of, in general, America, is that like, you can't be afraid to fail.
Yep.
Um and like there's nothing wrong with failing. So okay, so you gave it a shot and it didn't work. It's not like your life is not over. Like, you can go get a job. You're still a person with valuable skills and things to offer, um, and value to offer. And so, it's like, it's not, um, it's, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
It's
dust
not.
yourself off and go.
That's it. You pull yourself back up
Yeah.
and go do something else. You go
Yeah,
to your
exactly.
next practice company, right? so,
Yeah.
Yeah. The next
so look,
part,
you got
yeah.
all this
So,
practice, and you can now open up
Yeah.
your real company. So,
Well, I remember I shared with the sharks. I think our entire personal lives were cut out
yeah,
from the
exactly.
from the aired episode. But I come from a family of immigrants. My siblings and parents immigrated to the United States right before I was born, and they always instilled in me this idea of the American dream and the value of hard work, and that's something I really take to heart. And I think could be applied for any entrepreneur, that if you work hard, and even if your first idea isn't the one, that you're able to see a lot of success in, that shouldn't stop you from trying other ideas and other companies, and to kind of continue to move towards your dream of entrepreneurship, if that's what you want. And it's something that we think about often. We don't have a 100% success rate for every great idea and every product, but we continue to try and learn from our mistakes, and hope that the next product or the next launch or the next decision that we make will be better. um, but yeah, there's going to be mistakes made, and it's about learning and growing from them and trying again.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't think we could have come up with a better way of closing out the podcast than what you just said. So it is the American dream, and I am so happy that you guys are living it. Honestly, I'm so proud to be. I guess are we kind of sister companies with having Lori. You
Yeah,
know,
We're full siblings.
yeah, so we're
Yeah,
like, yeah, we're siblings. So, but I really appreciate you guys sharing a little bit about your journey, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys today, and I hope that hope you guys will consider doing another podcast in the future. I'd love to hear more about how things are going, and you know, just get some updates as your success continues.
Well, thanks, Joe.
Thank
This
you.
is a lot of fun, and I would love to talk to you again.
Yeah, well, I can't wait for it. So, but thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today, and I'm sure that all of the listeners got lots and lots of value. So I do appreciate it, and thanks again.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Lessons from the Tank. If you got value from today's podcast, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast so you're notified when a new episode is posted. If you'd like to support our podcast, we encourage you to review it and share it with a friend. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.